Hi there. I took the Tomboy out yesterday and it was perhaps a little bit too windy for it, and as a consequence I've just done a little bit of damage to the wing. Nothing major. In fact, if you look at the wing now you can't really tell unless you look at it closely. So the upside is, and there's always an upside, we're going to have a look at doing a minor repair to the wing. Does mean we're going to have to open it up, but hopefully we can do that from the underside and the repair won't be noticeable when we're finished. So I'm going to get this off the table and I'll line the camera up with the wing and I'll just show you exactly what the problem is. Now this wing has always been quite flexible, and which made me a little bit nervous when I was building it, but actually it's proved to be quite resilient, and it has come down fairly hard a couple of times and gone over on the wingtips and not done any damage. But like I say, it was particularly windy yesterday and perhaps I shouldn't have tried flying it. Now if we press on the wingtips we can see it flexing as it always has done, and actually that doesn't look a problem, that doesn't look to be a break. But if we put our hand in the centre and we lift this wingtip up, which, yeah, if we lift this wingtip up, I was just checking I've got the right wingtip, this is a good one. You can see there's a little bit of flex, but it's not too bad. If we lift this wingtip up, there's more flex and it bends from a crease here. And you can see a crease in the covering, and there's a little bit of a crease in the trailing edge. It's mainly in the leading edge, but also a little bit in the trailing edge. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the covering off on the underside, and we're going to get access to that spar from the underside and also the trailing edge, so we can assess the damage, and then we'll probably just brace it and then redo the covering. Hopefully we can leave the top intact so we retain the red, because it'd be nice if we couldn't see it and didn't damage the covering job that we've got, but only time will tell how that works out. Right, now I've got this open and I'm going to cut this a little bit more, and then I'm going to hold this covering back onto the top surface with a little bit of tape. So I've got this Scotch magic tape, and I'm just, because the last thing we want is for this to be flipping backwards and forwards and getting in our way. So just going to pin it back a little bit. Doesn't need much onto that top surface there, just to hold that back. Now we can see straight away that, I don't know how well that shows up, but there's a break in the main spar as well. Let me see if I get that. You can see that is opening up, possibly. But it hasn't done a huge amount of damage to the wing. First thing I'm going to do is put a little bit of CA into that joint to hold it and to stop it moving any further. And then I'm going to get a piece of balsa the same size, and I'm going to brace between that rib and that rib. It's broken just at the end of the dihedral brace there. So we're going to do that one first to hold it nice and steady with that, and then we'll come back and we'll look at the front and the back. Now when we're gluing this we need to make sure that this is absolutely straight, because this spar, the underside of this spar, because we don't want to introduce a bend or an angle into the wing. Well, that is set up nice and straight now. Just used a straight edge along the underside of this spar, and I'm just going to put some CA onto that. Now this break is quite jagged, and just adding the CA might actually be strong enough and might do a decent enough job, but in my mind it's not a good enough job, and we are going to brace this and make it a lot stronger, because the last thing we want to do is go through all this effort, take it out and break it again. Now I've just made myself a simple brace, just a bit of balsa wood, same size as the original spar, and so that's 3/16 wide and 1/2 inch deep, and I'm just going to put that between the two spars. Now I've had that in, I know it fits, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put thick CA on here, and then I'm going to clamp it into place, and the thick CA will give me time to get it into position and for it to be clamped before the CA goes off. And I'm just looking for my big T-pins somewhere. Here they are. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a T-pin in it, because the last thing I want to do is get the CA all over my hands and then find I'm stuck to it as well. So I'm going to use the T-pin, I'm going to put the thick CA, I'm going to put it into position, and then I am going to clamp it into place. And there we go, a dry run just to see that we can do it so we don't get into a mess. And then we're going to leave this and let it go off. And thick CA can take quite a while sometimes, so I'm going to leave that for a good few minutes before I then start to look at the rest of it. Now what I will do before I glue that is I will just check, having CA'd that we are still on a flat wing there, which I think we are. Just now is the time to check again before we actually glue that. Right, now got this clamped into place, and we'll give that a good few minutes before we disturb it. We take the pin out. Well, having seen that main spar, I think we've come off really luckily with this, that it hasn't broken the whole wing off, and I think it's possibly held together by the quality of the covering. So just, I mean, if it'd been a bit more force, it would have broken the whole wing. And these joints that we're repairing, hopefully we can repair them just as strong as they were originally, if not stronger. They seem to have nice jagged breaks which will easily glue, and then we can brace them. So this will hopefully be glued now, and we can peel back the covering. Yeah, that looks good. We can peel back the covering now, and we can have a look at that leading edge. Right, well, there's definitely a crack in the leading edge, and it's really hard to see. If I move that in, it's just between these two pencil marks, there's just a little bit of a break there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to brace that, but because it's not square on like this, we can't just stick a piece of balsa on the back. It's on an edge like that, so it's diamond shaped, and obviously the front has been shaped for the leading edge of the wing. And what I've done is I've made a brace which will just go on the back of there like that. So it's not a perfect fit, but it's pretty good. And what I've done to make that is I got a piece of balsa, I did a slot with a cut with the knife, and then turned it round and cut with a knife to get that shape. And then just to smooth it off, I used a little bit of sanding paper and garnet paper, and I put that into the slot and just gave it a little bit of a sand just to get that smoothed and nicely shaped. So what I'm going to do now, again using thick CA, is I'm going to glue this onto the back of that spar, and in doing so we need to make sure that we've got that spar nice and straight. I think it is sitting straight, but I will use my ruler again and I will eye it up down the length just to make sure before I glue it. I've got this held into place now. I've got this front edge flat on the bench, and I've checked that this front spar, this leading edge, is dead straight, which is great, which is just what we want. I've got a pin in my brace that's going on the back of this leading edge. I'll just check it for size, just check it fits in there, and that we can clamp it. Yeah, so we'll put on that thick CA again and we'll get this clamped in. Right, we've got that main spar fixed now, and we've got this front leading edge fixed, and that's made a huge difference to the wing. It's lost that kind of flex where it was broken. So what we're going to do now is just cut back the material again, or not again, but cut back the material like we did at the front to expose that trailing edge. And it seems to be broken, if it is broken, either side of the rib. So we'll probably just put a little bit of maybe just some corner braces either side of the rib and some CA on that on the actual trailing edge itself. But we'll have a look at that, so I'll do that now. Just trying to look at that closely. I don't know whether it is broken or not. I don't think it is, looking at it and feeling it now. We've repaired the rest of it. But I think what I'm going to do is I am going to just dribble a little bit of CA on that and put a couple of corner braces in, because I'm not totally sure, but looking at that I can't see a crack in it, and it's certainly, now we've fixed these other two joints, it's certainly not flexing, I don't think. So I will get some tape that back, and then we'll put in these corner braces. Right, now you can see I've put in those two corner pieces, and I've deliberately put the grain going that way, because if it comes this way and there is some flex, it could split. Now I've CA'd these in, and that has actually added more rigidity there than there was, so maybe there was a weakening even if it wasn't a total break. I mean, ideally I could have cut out some of the rib and put a continuous brace along there, but I didn't really want to do that because I wasn't even convinced it was broken. So I've just added a little bit of strength. So I think that is going to be fine now, and we've repaired it, it's solid, it's all square again. So what we need to do now is think about how we're going to do the covering on this, how we're going to effect a repair that looks good. Well, I've cut a little bit more out now just to make it slightly wider, so the new covering I'm going to be putting on the ribs so I can put pressure on to join it to the old covering, and I didn't want too much inside of that flapping around. And so this is my new piece of covering, and just waiting for the iron to warm up, which is set a little bit too hot, so let me just cool that down, set that to about 100. I'm going to be using Orocover, which is the same material that it was covered in originally. Now I've cut a little bit of a dog mouth in there, or a little bit out anyway, so that can go forward, and that will meet up with the original line either side, and then this original covering can come back and provide a little bit of a flap to hold that down, and downstream covering if you like. I know these two bits of joint here will be upstream, but hopefully we'll stick them down well and it won't come loose. So once my iron is up to temperature, which I think it more or less is now, we will see about getting this put on, and hopefully this will go on nicely. We haven't affected the top covering yet, although it is a little bit wrinkly, and I think that will need shrinking, and we'll need to be really careful when we are shrinking it, because with this type of wing, if we're not careful, we could introduce some warps, so we'll need to be really mindful of that. Now I'm just going to stick this front edge down now in line with that leading edge. There we go. And that's down. And we'll do this side as well. Let's just check this is on nice and square. This does shrink really well, this Aura cover, so which is good. Right, I've got this stuck down now, and I'm going to shrink it, I think, before I add this front edge, this overlap that will come over. So I'm going to shrink all that, and then I'll do that overlap, and then I'll probably need to shrink it again, and I will certainly need to turn it over and shrink it. And we will then need to check that we haven't introduced any warps into the wing by shrinking this but not other areas. So we'll have a look at that in a minute. Right, I've now got the covering, the wing and everything finished, and it's back to its former strength, which is still a little bit flexible for my liking, but this has gone really well. I'm pleased with how it's gone. There's a couple of things that I would have done slightly differently. If we look at the top, the brake was there. You can still see the crease in the covering. Let me just come around a little bit. You can still see the crease in the covering there, and at the front there's a very slight line on that leading edge. I don't know whether that actually shows up, where the covering film has actually just caught that brace, so that brace should have been shaved just a little bit more, just to make it slightly smaller. And also on the underside it's just caught a little bit there, so that could have been neater on the underside. But the back, that's gone on really nice, and I've shrunk it all, got all of the wrinkles out, and it is still lovely and square. And what I do is I put it like this on the bench, and I just eye it up, sort of moving my head up and down till I can just see the underside of the wings to make sure it's square. And I'm surprised really, because I thought I might introduce a twist, but that's come out lovely. If you do something like this and you get a twist, you can put it on the bench. You can either get somebody to hold it or put a weight. You can bend it just gently to where it needs to be, so if it's just kicking up a little bit or down a bit, you just put a twist and iron it. As you put a twist in, it will put wrinkles, and you just put in a twist and you just iron out the wrinkles and then check it again, and you should get your lovely straight wing. But thankfully we don't have to do this with this, and as you can see, that leading edge there, I don't know whether that shows up on the camera, is lovely and straight. So what more can I say other than I can't wait to get back to the airfield now and carry on flying my Tomboy Senior. So I hope you found that interesting and useful. Thanks very much for watching.